this debate is one of these twilight zone discussions that often occur here, where we say one thing and the reality is something entirely different. The Minister talks about supporting our neutrality and then acts as a cheerleader and an advocate of us being, in effect, an outpost of US imperialism. And in reality, our approach to this issue is very much like our approach to abortion, where we say there's no such thing as Irish abortion. We provide a constitutional right for an Irish woman to have an abortion, but we just don't allow her to have it in Ireland. And it's the same sickening hypocrisy which has stood over this debate here today. And I'd have far more respect for the government and for Fianna Fail if they just came out with it and told the truth that you're quite happy for us not to have a position of neutrality, because that is the reality of your actions. And the reason why you don't do it is because you understand very well that it is at variance with the will of the Irish people, as indicated in repeated opinion polls. Now, I personally believe that our neutrality probably has a lot more to do with the war against Britain, with nationalism in the early days and trying to free ourselves from the yoke of British imperialism, but it has developed into that, from that, into something which Irish people hold very dear. Irish people go on their holidays. They like to be recognised as not being English, not being from an aggressor nation. It's something that they hold dear. But they very much affiliate with the idea of being part of the peoples of the world rather than facilitating world powers. And we do, because of that, have a potential to punch way above our weight in terms of international affairs, and we've absolutely abandoned that. Now, obviously, as Deputy Wallace says, we're curtailed in what we can say in the run-up to our court case, but we will obviously have the full benefit of that after our court case, when Deputy Wallace is moving a similar bill which has been drawn out of the lotto in about 2 weeks' time, and we'll develop some of those points at that time. But one of the key reasons that you put forward, Minister, as to why you couldn't support this, and it was ably echoed by your Fianna Fail colleague, was the alleged basis that this would limit our willingness to respond to international situations. Absolute and utter rubbish. Obviously, what you're worried about is if we had this in our constitution, it might clip your wings a bit and prevent your ability to kowtow and breach our neutrality in the actions of this state. And I'm not surprised that Fianna Fail supported you, because WikiLeaks were very clear in exposing the role of Fianna Fail in this when Dermot Ahern came into this House on repeated basis and gave assurances that Ireland wasn't involved in renditions, and then we found out later on that he was going to the Americans and expressing his sincerely held belief that we were involved through our use of Shannon in that project. And we will be pursuing these issues and the complicity of certain sections of the Irish establishment in actively breaching our neutrality. And I think it's unfortunate that Fianna Fail compared us to Sweden, when we all know the active involvement that Sweden has with NATO, and proud of it, despite the wishes of its country for us to remain neutral. So these issues are very important. I think, as Deputy Wallace said, it's not just a matter of non-participation, it's also a matter of non-discrimination. And by us affording the rights that we do to the US military, to you, Shannon, then if we were really neutral, we should give them to Libya, to Russia, to Syria, to anybody else on their way to bomb or en route to the US itself, which obviously would be a ludicrous situation, setting Shannon up as a potential battlefield. Now, we do know from history that applications have come in before for people. I think the example of 1959, when the British government sought permission to use Tory Island for refuelling helicopters in naval exercises. I think the response of the Department of Foreign Affairs at that time was illustrative. And they said, on the face of it, it's difficult to see how they could accept the request of the British government, that the islands are as much part of Ireland as Stephen's Green is. And they said, it's known that we give permission for the landing of unarmed military planes engaged in peaceful duty, e.g. the US Army planes carrying US personnel for leave in Ireland or in transit to the USA. It is quite another thing to give permission not only for aircraft engaged on warlike exercises to land on our territory, but also to use our territory military as a refuelling base for such exercises. The key point here is that traditionally and in the 50s, US troops were going on their holidays to their garrison bases in Germany, not involved in conflict. That changed in 1999, and the simple scale of the movement of US personnel through Shannon Airport gives no other conclusion other than that they're involved in military exercises. 55,000 troops last year alone. Over 600 exemptions sought for military aircraft to land at Shannon, almost 2 a day. Over 700 exemptions sought to carry weaponry on chartered aircraft travelling and transiting those troops to the Middle East, to the slaughter and the horror that is underway there. Now, in deference to the other deputies, I will conclude my remarks and in the knowledge that we are back again. But the Minister should read the rulings of Justice Cairns in the High Court in the case of Ireland, Horgan versus Ireland, where he clearly said there were rules in terms of neutrality, but that this was a matter for the Dáil rather than for the courts. And we do need to revisit this and look at boosting our legislation, and the critical way of doing that is through our constitution. And it's my belief that you don't want to do that because you want to keep doing what you're doing, which is doffing the cap to the US establishment in return for a few sandwiches or a few cows.